Okay.
Far away.
Hi, I am Brian Lodge, a resident of Foster Terrace, Littleton. The residents of Foster and Gilmore Terrace, who have boundaries that back up to the Uramo Reserve, have major concerns around the fire buffer that is clearly delineated on the council draft development plan. The draft development plan also indicates that the area above the bench track, which runs along behind the houses on Foster Terrace, is to be planted with locally sourced native plants. The URMC, that's the Reserve Management Committee, has very little consultation with residents on how to implement the fire buffer in the rural development plan. They have instead initiated a native fire buffer on the boundary of residents' properties. Current URMC thinking has no consideration of managing the rural/urban interface. Instead, the committee is creating an area where there is no hard distinction between rural/urban spaces, which only increases fire spreading from or to the reserve. The focus of URMC has been to plant a native green border in the fire buffer area along the boundary of residents' properties. This planting does not take into account residents' own plantings and how fire could spread from the reserve plantings to the residents' plantings. We also question how effective the native green border would be in its current position against the considerable and growing build-up of fuel in the reserve. Many flax and cabbage trees have been planted throughout the fire buffer and are poorly maintained, with many dead leaves either hanging from plants or laying on the ground around them. Many of the low flammability natives in the reserve, which may play a role in fire suppression, are not being properly maintained. Also, large areas of gorse and muhlenbeckia, highly flammable, are growing just on the other side of the bench track in an area designated as a native planting area. In some areas, they're less than 10 metres from residents' boundaries. We, the residents, would like to see a clearly delineated space between the urban and rural areas, and the fire buffer needs to be curated. There is plenty of space in the reserve to plant natives in the area designated for native plantings, not just on residents' boundaries. Also, the lack of consultation with residents, some of whom have already removed trees and bushes from their own properties out of concern if there is a fire. The liability will be on the Christchurch City Council if a fire was to start in reserve and burn residents' houses. This could be a plan for all of the Littleton, Port Hills area on how to actually deal with the urban-rural interface and how we actually go about designating areas and clearing them in a fire buffer zone. This is obviously something that needs to be done. This summer would be the driest I have seen it out there, and I've been there since 2004. Some of the people have lived there since the 1970s, and they said they've never seen it so dry. So we're very lucky. You know.
Look, thank you very much. I actually was a bit disturbed when I read your submission, and I thought that it would benefit from a different approach, you know, more of a workshop with relevant staff, you know, in terms of
well, we've spoken with
plan.
the Reserve Management Committee, and one of the things that we'd like to possibly see is a subcommittee developed which actually looks into fire management on the reserve, and then also across the whole Littleton Basin and everything. Yeah.
I agree. Thank you. That's a very excellent suggestion. Thank you very much. Thank you.